Mark Grayson and Samantha Williams, otherwise known as Invincible and Adam Eve, would have enjoyed a night on the town, looking all across the city of Los Angeles, enjoying different sights, and enjoying some food together. And this was one of the most relaxing nights that Mark had ever had in his life. Definitely the most relaxing ever since he had begun training under Cecil. And Adam Eve was able to see that on Mark. In truth, a part of her was tempted to bring him to a spa if it wasn't for the fact that Mark was a superhuman, so there wasn't really any massages that would really work on him properly unless it's from somebody else on a similar level to him, but still. And the two of them were now sat on a roof talking about what had happened recently in their lives. And surprisingly, Mark was actually more interested about the normal civilian part of her life rather than the superhero part of her life. But of course it did make sense. Mark was still trying to get adjusted to living like a normal civilian. For so long, his identity had been Invincible, the hero that had been spawned from the vengeance and rage he'd been feeling towards Omniman, emotions he had directed into becoming the world's best hero. But it was so rare when he truly got to explore his other identity, Mark Grayson. That was mostly because for a pretty long while, he felt the identity of Mark Grayson died the very day his mom did. But thanks to all of the recent efforts, that belief had slowly been dying. The human that was Mark Grayson had slowly been returning. And as we talked, Mark also found out about all of the issues that was Eve's family. From Rexplode cheating on them to their family wanting Eve to forgive Rexplode just so they could have someone to protect them because they trusted Rex. And even how much Adam Eve's dad especially hated Adam Eve for their powers. And that did cause a slight chuckle to come out from Mark, and cause Eve to raise an eyebrow. She looked a little bit confused. Before Mark then explained to her, "I'll be honest, Eve, I'm kind of surprised sometimes you're still a hero. From everything you've gone through, I honestly wouldn't blame you for being a villain, but not just are you a hero, but you also go out of your way to help as many people as you can, even further beyond than just saving lives. Not just are you one of Earth's strongest heroes with your powers, you're also one of Earth's better heroes. If I'm being honest, you're an even better hero than I am." And that one caught Eve completely off guard. After all, hearing that from Mark, hearing that from someone who was the strongest hero on the planet and had been fighting people for quite a long while, making that basically his life, hearing that they believed that Eve was a better hero than him, it genuinely shocked Eve and made her feel flattered as well, especially because of the mention of the fact that she had gone through so much and yet still chose to be a hero. And Mark admired Eve for those traits. This is also because something even Mark could acknowledge, which was the fact that his circumstances made for the best ones to make a hero. His mom was taken out by a villain who was immediately adopted by Cecil. But Adam Eve was completely different. The world had constantly rejected her and said no to her, and yet she was still constantly trying her best to help people. If that wasn't a hero, he had no idea what was one. Though Adam Eve also definitely disagreed with him. After all, Mark was the strongest hero on Earth, and the mainline defense for Earth. He was worth more than the entire Guardians of the Globe combined as a powerhouse, not to mention the fact he could stop alien invasions completely on his own, even stopping that kaiju that Robot had told her about. It was pretty clear neither of them would agree on this topic, so they just agreed to disagree for now. And with that, the two of them closed their night, Mark and Eve both returning to their own separate homes. Little did they know danger was brewing all around them. As around that same time, the Order was having a meeting. A crime group with crime heads all across the globe, and currently they were talking about one person, the protector of Earth and Earth's strongest hero, Invincible. He had been getting in the way of so many of their operations, and they didn't really have anyone who could truly stop him. Sure, Mr. Liu might have a pretty good chance of stopping him and beating him, but Mr. Liu didn't want to get his hands dirty yet. Especially considering the area that Mark Grayson acted the most wasn't really his area. So he instead decided he would give one of the people underneath him a chance to prove themselves, that person of course being Machine Head, leaving the definite elimination of Invincible to him. And Machine Head the perfect person in mind for this. An assassin he had recently hired, one who was far stronger than anyone he had ever met, and far stronger than anyone ever seen. While Machine Head was confident they could take out the Guardians of the Globe, Invincible was an entirely different beast. But with him alongside his other assassins as support, they had a pretty good chance at this. But when he brought it up to this assassin, the assassin told him that he would be going alone. Based on everything he had heard, this man will likely be strong, and he didn't want anybody getting in the way whatsoever. This assassin was Battle Beast. He told him that he would eliminate Invincible for him, and sending other people to help him would be worthless. After all, if he wouldn't be able to beat him on his own, there's no way the other people being there would help. And more importantly, if Machine Head did send anybody else along them, he would kill them on the spot. He wanted this fight alone. Machine Head decided to agree. After all, he knew the strength of Battle Beast quite well, and he didn't want that strength placed on him. So Machine Head decided to agree to those terms. He had absolute full confidence in Battle Beast to be able to handle this. As the next day would pass, Mark was currently out on patrol, until he suddenly saw a large crash nearby. Smoke and rubble began to kick up, as Mark blinked, looking a little bit confused at what that was. And in that crater, he saw what looked like a rather odd person, a weird mix of a humanoid and what looked like a white lion. And Battle Beast smirked as he looked up towards Invincible, with Invincible landing in front of him as his helmet began to scan them. Before he then said, "Is everything alright? I'm not here to immediately arrest you, I don't know what happened. But I can help you if you're lost. but when his helmet finished scanning him, he immediately saw something that was bone-chilling to even him. And right now, Invincible was really hoping that this wasn't an enemy, because his helmet was warning him that this person in front of him was much stronger than him. As Battle Beast then said, "I have gone across several galaxies to find an opponent worthy of me testing my strength against, and you have been chosen as my next prey." Which immediately confirmed it for Invincible, as he decided to ask something before they started fighting. "I can tell you're not someone who enjoys killing people for no reason, or else you would have landed on some innocent people. So before we start this, do you mind if I take us somewhere else with no people? It will allow me to fight at my full potential and full capacity." And upon Battle Beast hearing that, he decided to nod in agreement without hesitation, as Invincible lifted up his hand, teleporting both himself and Battle Beast over to the same area where he fought the Hail Mary. And Cecil got on the line, quickly telling Mark that he was calling over the Guardians before Mark told him no. Judging by how strong this man was, sending over the Guardians would be a death sentence to them. Right now, the only thing that Mark thought might actually be able to help him was the Hail Mary, but he rejected that idea, mainly because of the person that Battle Beast seemed to be. He felt there might be a chance this battle doesn't end up with one of them dead, but bringing over the Hail Mary would certainly make it so one of them would die. And Battle Beast looked around at this place, quickly beginning to analyze it, and he was rather curious at the place he had been brought to, as he spun around the mace that he wielded before looking towards Mark, asking if he was ready for this glorious battle. And Invincible nodded, as he said, "Thank you for understanding this is where I can fight my best, so allow me to show my gratitude." And Invincible was already beginning to make strategies. He knew he was going to need to be careful against something like this. Not just could he tell that Battle Beast was stronger than him thanks to his scanners, he could also tell him the way that Battle Beast carried himself, he was actually more skilled than him as well. During his time in the GTA, he had met plenty of skilled fighters, and he was able to pick up some of their skill himself, so he could see when someone absolutely outclassed him in skill. It had been so long since the last time he fought somebody who was stronger than him. The last person was Immortal, but he had long since surpassed Immortal. But Mark felt like he had some advantages here. He wasn't just going to have to go in as a raw brawler. Judging by his scans, he was able to tell that Battle Beast didn't seem to have any flight-based capabilities. Though he would definitely be able to jump to reach him, he wasn't able to do freeform flight like he was. He could already tell his smoke screens were going to be useless thanks to Battle Beast's senses, however he could definitely do some tactics. As he lifted up both of his hands, they glowed a bright green before firing off a massive laser right towards Battle Beast's direction. This was tech based in Flaxen designs copied in order to be added to Mark's suit, upgraded by both Robot as well as the Muller twins. And while Battle Beast was most definitely pushed back a bit by that attack, he quickly stood back up as he began to rush right through the attack towards Mark's direction. Mark then clenched his fists together, as both Battle Beast and Mark clashed fists with each other. The clash was so potent it sent a shockwave all across the entire nation. Fortunately, they chose to battle in an abandoned area, or else that would have caused a lot more damage. And Battle Beast smirked a bit as he began to push Mark's fist back a little bit. Battle Beast was also slightly surprised. He wasn't expecting that laser to be weaker than Invincible's physical power. But it wasn't something that Battle Beast minded either, as he used one hand to grip onto Invincible's fist in order to hold him there, before using his other to slam it right into Invincible's face, slamming him right through several trees in the process. But then Invincible's body glowed green, as he teleported and appeared right behind Battle Beast, using the momentum from Battle Beast's previous attack to increase the power of a kick he landed right on Battle Beast's head. As Battle Beast blinked, he was caught off guard by Invincible's sudden teleportation, and he had to admit that kick had more oomph than he was expecting. But still, he was impressed. More than that, he was happy that Invincible didn't die immediately after that first hit. And Battle Beast quickly turned around as he attempted to rush right towards Invincible again, before Invincible clamped his hands together, launching out a shockwave with that clap that pushed Battle Beast backwards even further. A smirk rose on Battle Beast as he looked up towards Invincible. He could already tell this was most certainly going to be just as fun as he expected, as he decided to ask Invincible why he was so strong. From what he knew, humans on this planet couldn't grow that strong. And Invincible answered, "My humanity is my strength." And that was a curious answer to Battle Beast. But he decided not to focus on it too long. After all, for now he felt like he was done with words. He would allow to use actions to speak for them. Meanwhile, back at the GTA headquarters, Cecil was watching this entire battle between Mark and Battle Beast go down. He could see just as well as Mark that Battle Beast was much stronger than him. And while Cecil was tempted to call on the Guardians of the Globe as backup, Mark had already told him no. Cecil was right now thinking on what the best way he could help Mark possibly was. The clones weren't ready yet. Hail Mary was probably going to be their best option, but even then, that might not help against someone like Battle Beast. Though fortunately, he did have the Guardians of the Globe do something else. They had gotten a tip from a certain criminal who saw this as the perfect chance to take someone out. Battle Beast was the main protector that Machine Head had, and if he was out of the picture, there was no way the Guardians of the Globe wouldn't be able to arrest Machine Head. So the criminal known as Titan decided to take advantage of this, leaking Machine Head's current weak state, and the Guardians of the Globe were all sent there in order to deal with Machine Head. But at the same time, Cecil was stuck watching, worried and stressed out that something was going to happen to Mark. Donald in particular noticed his worry. After all, it was unlike Cecil to actually be worried for a weapon like this. But he also knew Cecil well, and was at this point able to tell. Cecil most certainly saw Mark as more than just a weapon. And as much as Cecil tried to deny that himself as well, even he knew that was the case. Right now he was just hoping that Mark would be able to win this and find a way. He knew Invincible was smart. That was going to have to be his ticket to victory. Mark slowly began to raise both of his arms, changing his stance in preparation. He already knew that Battle Beast was stronger than him, so he was going to need to focus on moves that would be able to turn Battle Beast's own strength against him. And when Battle Beast saw that, he smirked a little bit. He had been fighting for a long time, including fighting humanoids of similar styles to Mark. Several of the opponents he had fought he didn't just kill for brute strength, and he was certainly curious what the skills of this warrior would bring to him, as both Mark and Battle Beast rushed right towards each other in order to continue a hand-to-hand clash. Battle Beast started on the offense by trying to slam his mace into Mark's head once again, but Mark was just narrowly able to dodge it by ducking underneath it as he quickly opened up his hand, firing out a small laser right towards Battle Beast's eyes. But Battle Beast was narrowly able to dodge just by moving his head slightly out of the way, as he attempted to land a punch right on Invincible's gut. But Invincible at the last moment was able to redirect Battle Beast's blow, using it in order to move behind his arm instead. As he attempted to land a punch right on Battle Beast's face, but Battle Beast was able to move his head backwards again in order to dodge, before spinning with the movement and slamming his mace right into Invincible's side, sending him rocketing backwards even more before chasing after him. This blow was a rather hard one as well, as it caused Invincible to cough up some blood in his suit. As Battle Beast attempted to rush right towards Mark, trying to grab him by the face, but just narrowly he blasted the ground underneath himself to give himself some propulsion, as he flew higher into the air, barely avoiding Battle Beast's blow, before flying right towards Battle Beast's back and landing a hard punch on it. Battle Beast had a near instant retort, as he quickly spun around and slammed his fist right into Mark's face, grabbing him by the head and slamming him hard into the ground, making a hard crater where Mark landed, as he was about to try and jump down on Mark, but Mark at the last moment clapped his hands together, firing out another one of those shockwaves right towards Battle Beast, forcing Battle Beast to take it head on due to his inability to fight as he was launched backwards, giving Invincible just enough time to fly out from the crater and look towards Battle Beast. While Invincible landed more hits so far, he was able to feel that Battle Beast's hits he had landed were significantly heavier on him. Still, so long as he was cautious, he could have some advantages. After all, the teleporter was a pretty massive advantage that Mark had. Not to mention that he wielded range capabilities in comparison to Battle Beast, who didn't wield any. But then Battle Beast quickly closed distance, as he told Invincible that the warm-up was now over. And he quickly landed a punch right on Invincible's face, causing a slight hinge of pain to go through Invincible's body, as Battle Beast attempted to land his claws right into Invincible's chest, but at the last second Invincible was able to teleport out the way. As he teleported above Battle Beast and attempted to land a punch on his head, but Battle Beast span out the way, his super enhanced senses depicting the very moment that Mark had ended up spawning in the air, as he quickly grabbed Mark's fist and slammed him hard into the ground, making another crater, and he quickly jumped into the crater, landing another punch onto Mark and another. And Mark tried to clap his hands together, but this time Battle Beast wasn't letting him, as his entire body glowed green. This time it was a different green, as he opened up both his hands and fired another blast right towards Battle Beast, these two being a full charge blast. Of course, he wasn't really expecting it to kill Battle Beast, so just be enough of a distraction, which he succeeded at, as Mark quickly teleported out of the way, teleporting out from the crater. As Battle Beast hopped out from the crater clapping a little bit, he had to admit he was impressed by that intelligence. But the difference between the two was being shown. While Mark Grayson was incredibly strong, he was still limited. His experience wasn't anywhere near as close to Battle Beast. He wasn't anywhere near as strong as Battle Beast either, but he was trying to force himself to think on some strategy, some way he might be able to win this, but he couldn't find one. Battle Beast was now able to see right through his teleportation. The best he could do was stall in time for hand-to-hand combat, but he knew better than most he wasn't going to outplay Battle Beast. Calling for backup also wasn't an option either, not against someone like this. The only thing that might be able to provide some backup to him right now would be the Hail Mary, and even then, he wasn't too sure about that. And Mark didn't have much time to think, as Battle Beast began to do his next rush right towards him, and Invincible met that charge head on. He knew trying to run away was not his best option, so him and Battle Beast began to exchange blows repeatedly. But each time he did, he was pushed more and more onto the defense. Battle Beast was repeatedly pressing his advantages, landing several slashes, several hard blows right on his body, each blow between the two causing even more shockwaves to echo throughout the island. Sure, Mark was certainly an entertaining challenge, but he wasn't stronger than Battle Beast, and Invincible hated this. He felt so helpless, he felt so weak, and it was starting to settle in for him. If he didn't figure out some way to fight against Battle Beast, he was going to die. But there just was no way. There was nothing he could have done. He was going to die. All the time he had spent training, everything he had spent his life dedicated towards, trying to get revenge on Omniman, trying to become Earth's best guardian, all of it was for nothing. He wasn't even going to get the closure of meeting Omniman again. He wouldn't be able to see any of his friends again. Everything that he had spent his life working towards was going to be gone. As Battle Beast quickly grabbed Mark by the face and slammed him hard into the ground, a wide smirk slowly rising on Battle Beast as he began to pick up his mace. As he said, "You are most certainly an opponent I will remember for the rest of my life. Such a shame that you will not be the one to eliminate me on this day." And a final memory hit Invincible in that moment, his mom. If he died here, the last memory of his mom, the last proof that his mom had existed, would go along with them. And a rage boiled up in Mark. Emotions that Mark had been suppressing for so long, trying to direct mainly into his training, but he'd never really allowed himself to feel it in combat. But now he was embracing it. Now he was embracing that anger, as he forced Battle Beast off of his body, punching Battle Beast hard in the face, harder than he had this entire fight, as it was followed up by another, and another, and another. Each of these blows were less controlled in comparison to the one before, but they had more power behind it, more power that even Battle Beast wasn't expecting. As that fall was interrupted by a knee to the chin, before Mark grabbed his face midair and slammed him into the ground hard, giving Battle Beast taste of his own medicine by making him into a crater. As Mark rushed right into the crater with Battle Beast currently inside, starting to push him down deeper and deeper into it. As Mark then yelled out, "I will not allow myself to die here. I have far too much to allow myself to die here and now. I am the protector of humanity in this world, and I will take down any challenges that come my way." As Mark then closed both of his fists together and slammed them hard into Battle Beast, not even noticing in that moment that his voice changer was broken, but he didn't care. He was letting rage fully take over, as the crater collapsed in on itself, becoming significantly greater than it was before, almost making it look like a meteor had hit this area. And Mark started to pant to himself. That was exhausting. He had never put that much power into a single fight before. Not to mention all the damage he had taken from Battle Beast, he was near certain some of his bones were broken. Still, he won. He won this battle. Or at least that was what Invincible thought, as out from the smoke wave, Battle Beast rushed right up towards him, uppercutting Mark hard in order to launch him high into the air. Currently, Battle Beast was injured, having some blood going down his body, but he had a wild smirk right now. He enjoyed this even more. He wasn't expecting that amount of power to come out from Mark. He wasn't expecting someone like that to hold that much power and still have that much in reserves to use later. As Battle Beast then landed on the ground before jumping up again in order to reach him, punching Mark in the gut so hard that he was slammed right back into the ground, breaking several of Mark's ribs in that blow. As Battle Beast then landed in front of him, taking out his mace once more. And Battle Beast then said, "I must admit, it had been so long since something had actually forced me to use my full power. So tell me, what is your actual name? Not the superhero designation, but your real name." And Mark could see that he was about to die. This was going to be where he died. He had no more power left. He had no more energy left. He was on the verge of passing out. It had been so long since he fought against somebody who was actually stronger than him. And there was actually a part of him that was thankful for that experience. But before either of them could make their next move, suddenly somebody else teleported. This person was the head of the GDA, Cecil Stedman. Mark's eyes widened in fear for a moment, scared for Cecil. He was wondering, why did Cecil decide to show himself in person? Battle Beast was also shocked. Not just was this a civilian using the same type of technology that Invincible was using, but it was also a normal person from what he could tell by appearance was weaker than average. But that was when Cecil chose to speak, and it was the reason why he came alone, so he'd be able to catch Battle Beast completely off guard. As Cecil then said, "So, you want to fight against strong opponents if I'm reading you correct, right?" And Battle Beast tilted his head a little bit, as he looked over to Invincible and said, "Isn't that the strongest fighter that Earth has?" Which led to Cecil nodding, as he said, "That is correct. Invincible is by far the strongest hero that we have, but he has not achieved his full potential yet. By human years, he's about 17, still a kid, but by the species he's a part of that gave him that power, by Viltrumite age, he's barely a baby." And that surprised and shocked Battle Beast. Sure, he was aware that Invincible was strong, but he wasn't aware he was part Viltrumite. But that also surprised and shocked Mark. He wasn't expecting Cecil to give away that information to save his life. From what he knew at this point, the Muller twins had by far enough DNA to make a clone of Mark. The first clone was going to be done pretty soon. So Mark thought that he was replaceable, but for some reason Cecil was choosing to protect him. More than that, he was giving away critical information like that. Though his mind immediately went to the fact that maybe, just maybe, something went wrong with the cloning. That had to be it. He was still necessary. Or maybe Cecil just wanted two superheroes like Invincible to be around rather than just one. But while Mark was trying to think things over and try and figure out why Cecil was doing this, Cecil continued to talk, as he said, "Right now he hasn't even gotten close to achieving his full potential. He might have been a good battle for you now, but in the future he will become much stronger. I can tell you're an alien, so I want to ask, are investments a thing? What I'm asking you is to just invest in Invincible's potential. he will become a much stronger fighter against you later. And while Battle Beast did have a job to do, at the same time that idea sounded way too interesting to him. It wasn't like normal circumstances where he was up against someone at their full potential. This one was nowhere close to it. Even more surprising to Battle Beast was he was expecting by this point Machine Head to have actually said something. Little did he know somebody else had chosen this as their perfect time to take advantage of Machine Head's vulnerability. Titan had given a tip to the Guardians of the Globe, and they were sent out to deal with Machine Head while this was all happening. And if Battle Beast not present there in order to protect Machine Head, that was dealt with rather quickly. And once Battle Beast heard Cecil's proposition, as well as seeing just how much power Mark had as well as his potential, he decided he was going to agree. As Battle Beast then said, "I must admit, your warrior was certainly a worthy fighter. I'm more than excited for this deal. When I think the time has come for me to battle him again, I will arrive in order to do so." As Battle Beast activated the portal on his wrist, walking out and using the portal to transport himself elsewhere. Mark Grayson was on the verge of passing out, as he looked up to Cecil and he had one question on his mind, one question that he asked out loud. Why did he risk so much even showing up in person to save him? And Cecil opened his mouth as he was about to answer for a second before he decided to think on what his answer was. But he decided to tell Mark to rest for now. The two of them could talk more proper once Mark was fully healed. This also would end up buying some time for Cecil to think on this, as Mark himself passed out right after. Now of course Cecil did also have some objective and good reason for why to save Mark. It was better to have two superheroes like Mark Grayson on the planet rather than one. Even if the cloning was successful, it was better to have two Invincibles on the planet rather than wasting resources. But Cecil could tell that wasn't it. There was something else in him, some other reason why he chose to spare him, and he wasn't too sure what that reason was. No, he was lying to himself. He knew exactly what that other reason was, but he didn't want to admit it, because he didn't feel he earned the right to be able to admit it. As other GDA soldiers began to come to this area, medics teleporting in order to bring Invincible back to base, while Cecil returned back to the main base area as well, getting the call from the Immortal that they had succeeded in arresting Machine Head. Cecil still considered this a rather eventful and good day for them. It was quite a victory for them. But he wanted to do research on that warrior. While he was able to tell he was from space, he couldn't tell what. He couldn't tell exactly who they were. And considering how powerful they were certainly added to the threat list. They didn't know where that source of power came from, if there were more creatures like that Battle Beast, or if he was one of a kind. But until Cecil Stedman figured it out, he was going to make sure that he got as much information as possible.